Good morning, everyone. I'm Azum, a customer success leader here at AiDASH. I lead a team that ensures that all of you, our customers, are achieving your goals by working with us to help you solve your toughest operational challenges while keeping your infrastructure reliable and resilient, as we've heard is such an important part of our community, our nation, as we discussed this morning. My background's in management consulting. I worked in operations and maintenance for industrial manufacturers and infrastructure with an engineering and technology bent. And I'm continually inspired by all of you as my team works with all of you customers every day. We see leaders here tackling some of the toughest and most complex problems that we've seen in generations in energy, using cutting edge technology, demonstrating a strong commitment to transforming our operations to meet the need of the year. And in the face of the biggest changes to the energy industry in decades. I'm really proud of the community that we built up of people who have taken a topic like vegetation management, where you are already experts on things that I'm just getting deep on, like tree species, the species of the pests that infest those trees, grid load, changing human behavior within your organizations from people from all walks of life. And now you've added to that list computer vision AI, you've added satellites, mobile apps, aerial imagery, and now with emerging climate threats like wind gusts that are 70 miles per hour plus, wildfires. That's a lot of different topics for utility leaders. I don't know that if you expected to solve all those things when you were getting to this career 10, 20, 30 years ago, but that's what you've got to solve today. And so we have a really distinguished panel with us today, leaders who are facing some of these tough operational challenges, and I'm really fortunate to have them share their insights. So I want to start with some introductions. So on my left, I've got August Ritter, who's operations manager for vegetation management at Xcel Energy, brings 13 years of forestry and utility experience, has led vegetation management programs, and previously worked with the U.S. Forest Service. After is Kristen, who oversees Alabama Power Company's vegetation management and power delivery contract services. With over 23 years of experience, she leads teams that improve the reliability and manage the budgets for both transmission and distribution. And then Don Adcock, a veteran leader at Entergy for 30 years, managing vegetation strategies across 4 states. He's including Louisiana, where we are today. He's been pivotal in ensuring the safety and reliability through innovative approaches to vegetation management. Between these 3 utility leaders, their companies cover 15 states in the U.S., which is pretty impressive. And they have several decades of experience between them. But I'm also excited to welcome Shubham Kumar, who's a managing director and partner at Boston Consulting Group, where he advises global energy clients on grid modernization, operational excellence, and digital transformation, and helps utilities navigate the changing utility landscape, which is the change that we're here to talk about today. So, look, these folks understand the critical role of people, processes, and leadership in meeting all these transformative needs of the hour. And so I'm excited to hear their stories and share those with you. So with that, I want to begin with a question for our utility leaders, which is that in your experience as leaders, every leader faces moments when staying the same is no longer an option. Was there a specific challenge or trend that made transformation unavoidable in your organization? I want to start with you, August.
Sure. So we walked into the situation we're in, like a lot of utilities probably have or maybe are right now, where from a vegetation management standpoint, our costs were increasing. There's all these incremental costs that typically outpace the marginal increases you get to your budget every year. Costs were going up, reliability was flatlining or starting to decrease. And that was kind of a slow death that was happening over, let's say, 7 to 10 years. But then COVID happened. Xcel took a pretty aggressive approach and had a very large crew shutdown, and that shutdown worked for, 6, 7 months throughout the year. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the point where okay, we realize we're heading in a unrecoverable direction. We have to change pace if we still want to maintain reliability and do it with a realistic O&M budget, realizing there's not going to be any windfall coming in the near future. And that's when we came on board with the AiDASH, understanding that The cyclical 4-year, 5-year approach was not going to be sustainable any longer. In that we should be targeting things that actually need to be worked and then push things off that maybe don't need to be worked, because a lot of edge managers will know, I mean, a lot of your costs actually doing the work is not just trimming the tree. It's getting there, it's scheduling the work, it's cleaning up, it's finding your dump sites, it's staging your guys. All those costs that go into doing the work that don't necessarily have to do with, the tree work itself. We started down that road with criticality and growth modeling to try to target the areas that, need to be worked and would have the highest bang for buck reliability-wise. And now we're about 3 years into it, and so far it's been, I think it's bearing fruit, but as you all know, when we're working in the natural world and with a scale, with weather and every single year that can change pretty drastically, you can't really look back in 3 years and say, yes, this is absolutely working, or no, it's absolutely not working. You kind of need 10 years of data at that point to understand really where you came. So I'm excited with the direction we're going, and can't wait to see the data that comes with it too.
Fantastic. Kristen, same question to you. What was the moment when staying the same was no longer an option? Was there a specific tipping point for you?
Yeah, I don't think for Alabama Power it was a discrete moment. It's kind of evolved over several years. We have had some challenges around just where we are in the world. We have a lot of biodiversity, a lot of vegetation that we're challenged with, a lot of line miles we're trying to manage, and just trying to balance that with the resources that are available. Certainly became a challenge when the labor markets were really strained during the COVID times. I would say that the team that had been in place prior to my joining the group, they were always looking at innovative ways they could do things differently. They just didn't have the technology necessarily to do it. So as technology has developed and these tools have been developed, we started to explore those, and we had a lot of executive leadership support to do that. Alabama Power is very intentional about innovation and using data and AI to change the way we run our business. So it was an easy set. I wasn't having to go and say, convince people to do it. They were very supportive. So it was just a matter of really figuring out what was out there that could take us the next step, and making sure that the folks doing the work were supportive of that.
Dawn, you've worked across 4 different states in your career. What were some of the big changes and kind of any discrete changes that you've seen, especially recently?
Well, it's a similar story to them. The funding is the main thing. We started off with AiDASH with a prioritization in mind. We were fully funded. We were working everything we needed to for the old cycle-based plan. But we could see that the funding wasn't going to go up. The costs were continuing to rise, so it wasn't sustainable. And now we're tasked with trying to do more with less. And so the technology allows us to more rapidly look at what are your priorities, what are your, crises that are coming, and to try to be more surgical with your planning. So that's kind of what we found, is that we could no longer just go every 5 years and trim a circuit. And then managing at a circuit level, we're a pretty rural utility, so our circuits are long, and we manage at a circuit level. So we're trying to break that down, and we do it some manually, but we're trying to get it where we're more surgical and using smaller segments and not wasting dollars trimming parts of the circuit that are adding no value. So, we realized that, but as long as we were funded, I guess it was comfortable to just keep doing what we'd always done. But the funding kind of went away because we are the biggest O&M spend at Entergy. And so there's always a strain on that, and it's the lever everybody looks to pull when there's a need to cut O&M. So.
Shubham, reflecting upon what these utility leaders have kind of shared with us so far, is this, why is this moment different, if at all, than any other moment when, okay, my budget was cut? Like, what makes this moment so special in time?
So, yeah, I think makes sense. And let me relate to all the utility leaders' comments here. They perfectly resonate. I've had the opportunity to look at it in a cross-sectional manner because I've been supporting utilities over the last 12 years or so across North America, similarly sized large utilities. And if I have to point out last couple of years and coming 3, 4, 5 years that I'm seeing in the industry, taking a step back, it is a perfect storm. And I'll tell you why. Because most of the part of the utility value chain is getting challenged. And let me parameterize that. Customers used to be captive. That was the utility model. Nowadays, there is a huge load growth coming from data centers. And that is not a captive customer. Everyone is fighting for those customers. So you need to develop the capability and muscle to go grab that customer, convince them to come here. That part is changing. You have a lot more focus on renewable, so everyone is transitioning their portfolio and trying to maintain their operations with intermittency. You have the intensity and frequency of the environmental disasters are increasing. Like wildfire has become such a huge phenomena nowadays and can pose a lot of risk. And we have seen, in the last month, so we have seen 2, 3 major storms coming in. So you have to be resilient. You have to very quickly understand what is the damage to my infrastructure and quickly go and do that. And lastly, you have the advent of technology where so many manually intensive workflows that you've had for 50, 60 years have a major opportunity to get completely disrupted. So if you see across the value chain, we are seeing challenges/opportunities, and all of them have come together sort of in the last couple of years, and we see that. So I think it does present a burning platform, at the same time major opportunities for the whole industry.
So, we're talking a lot about all the, the burning platform, all these changes. You all, as utility leaders, have reflected upon, changing expectations within the company around budget and performance. Utilities are known for sometimes moving slowly to adapt to these changes. But now we're in a world where the changes are just happening fast, whether it's from the environment, whether it's from tech. You don't get to tell it all to slow down. That's just the world that you've got. So when did you realize that you need to start moving quickly or more quickly than you already had been? And how did you communicate urgency across the organization? I want to start with you, Kristen.
Yeah, probably when I came into this role and we started talking about what technology was out there, it was like, oh, we need to be leveraging some of this. How do we move forward? I think you're right when you say typically utilities move slowly. I think that's shifting. I think with technological developments, utilities are starting to see, how can we leverage some of this in a way that we call it starting with version 0. So we'll start with version 0 and we'll go down the path. And if we need to change something along the way, we'll iterate and we'll make it work for our business. The other thing we kind of say is we want to keep abreast of what's out there, but we want to be able to, if we elect to go with a specific technology to solve a specific problem or to enhance the work that we're doing, we want to be able to fail fast. So we want to position ourselves so that we're not married to something that maybe isn't working for us, and we can then step away from it and do something different. Or if technology develops and a new solution comes along, we want to be able to take advantage of that. So for us in particular, we were looking for tools and resources that we could readily incorporate into our process day one, and it would add value without a lot of burden to integrate it into all the bits and pieces of the other things that we were doing.
August, how about yourself? Xcel is distributed across 8 different states, and massive states, by the way. You've got a lot of crews, you've got a lot of managers. Again, is changing Xcel slow or fast? Is it speeding up? How have you kind of dealt with the urgency question?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, it's speeding up, because the necessity is there that it has to speed up. As far as the urgency goes, I mean, the way we're incorporating AiDASH is to essentially do strategic planning for the bedrock of our operation. So it's not like we can sit here and talk about it for weeks or months. We more or less need to make a decision and move on so we can get the work to the crews, they know where they're gonna work, we can get out there and operations can keep flowing. So you can't have guys laid off for a week or 2 weeks while you're trying to figure that out. You know, I'm very much of the mindset where if you wait for what you're working with to be perfect before you jump off, you're never going to jump off. You just have to recognize that there's going to be problems. Kind of, Kristen, to your point, you said, you know, you want to fail fast, but also understand that you are going to run into issues. You're going to have to figure things out along the way. It's not going to be perfect right out of the gate. And getting people to understand that along the way, you know, everybody, they're skeptical of change, and anytime there's something that fails, they're really critical of it. But if you can get them to understand that right out of the gate, I think it makes those little setbacks easier to overcome, and you don't lose buy-in along the way.
Yeah, I guess you're kind of referring to something that, you know, we like to call the North Star. Shubham, in your experience, how can clarifying a North Star for a large team, especially a distributed team, how can measurable goals help to manage the pace of change in an organization?
A great question, and it's not just utilities where we face that, or, you know, change is difficult to adopt. And that's where outcomes allow you to shift focus from the transition to the future state, and that changes the perspective. For example, any technology or any process flow in the field, getting to the future state is more difficult, but after you get there, envisioning how it is going to change my day-to-day life, change my departmental goals, or change my organizational goals, that actually gives you a more positive perspective. And that's where we see is that even when you're setting KPIs or final North Star goals, you need to appropriately set it for the appropriate stakeholders. For example, in my experience, executives are a lot more excited about what is the final financial KPIs or operational KPIs at an organizational level I'm going to see. But when you come to middle-level management, in addition to that, you need to help them address departmental goals. You need to explain to them how it is going to help their people under them, you know, do better jobs and motivate them a bit and take decisions on their own rather than having to, you know, help them a lot take decisions. And then at the frontline level, you need to be able to show to that front line, because adoption is the key to any successful transformation, is that how your day-to-day life is going to change. While the transition might be difficult, but when you get there, you don't have to spend 80% of your time in aggregating data to make a decision. That would be automatic. You would be actually spending more of your time on the key decisions that you have to make. And those things, the future view, and translating the KPI to the right KPIs with the right stakeholders, you know, helps people, you know, get people moving.
Don, a similar question to you. When have you experienced kind of a snap need to start moving faster, and how have goals helped you to communicate those types of changes?
Well, more recently in the past couple of years, our budgets have been less stable. So you have to be able to respond quickly, both for, you know, reducing budget if there's a need to, or being able to quickly identify what work can I do with additional money, and what you have to sell that to management. You know, used to you were kind of expected to take care of things. You were given a budget and you operated within that budget. As long as reliability was where they expected, there wasn't a lot of interaction. Now we're much more integrated with the other departments and kind of competing for the same funding. So you have to be able to quickly adjust and give data, like, if I give you X amount of money, what can you give me back? And very quickly, and run scenarios and give, you know, if you cut this much, here's going to be the impact. If you give me this much. But anyway, so realizing that you were at risk of losing that money or not getting that opportunity. And then the other thing is, I think our regulators have become much more adept at analyzing whether you're prudently spending your funds. So you have to be able to back up what you say. And this, the capability to quickly back up what you say is crucial now.
So as I say, all others bring data, right? You've heard that phrase before. So I want to kind of move on to, I think you all referred to technology at some point in talking about change. Kristen, you referred to, APC embracing AI. What were some of the biggest challenges in adopting new technology like AI, like geospatial-based tools? Did you face any corners of pushback, whether it's from sort of, the executive suite or the front line? How'd you manage that? So
I think we anticipated where we could get some pushback, and I've got part of my team over here, so I'm looking at them, but we anticipated that early. So as we were making decisions about which tools we wanted to go with, we engaged our frontline field users in the evaluation of those tools. So when we made a decision, we felt like that better positioned us so that the whole team was on board with the decision we made as to what we were going to use. Not only that, I think brilliantly our VM managers identified some folks in the field who are excited about technology and how we can use that in this very traditional business, and we sort of tagged them as our field champions of the project. So I think that's helped us be successful in the adoption. We also, tagging on to what August said earlier, we also really set the expectation. I can remember sitting in a kickoff meeting with Tiago and Michelle, and we were doing some training. I think Brian may have been there, and I kind of just set the expectation. It is not going to be perfect from the get-go because we were still in the configuration mode, and so I kind of set the expectation. I don't want to hear complaints. I want to hear recommendations and solutions. So when you run into something that it's not giving you what you think it should, or we need to do configure it a little bit differently, let's be about finding the solution and moving forward.
Yeah, just thematically, I've heard a lot about, what I might call the 80% solution, right? It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be moments in the road. Let's handle it as they come. Don, how did you get, especially thinking about the front line, how did you get people who have been doing things one way for a very long time to all of a sudden start embracing AI and, just crazy new tech?
So our model was to build a group where we have people across the system that are the champions of that, and they participate in development and then help them roll that out to their peers across the system. And that's been successful. And where there is resistance, one of the things we do is field verify the accuracy of what the output is. And I think the first time they did that, the shock at how accurate it was, I think got rid of a lot of those fears and made them trust it more, so that now it's kind of just understood that what we get is going to be basically right. And then every correction you make, the AI can learn from that and be even more accurate as you move forward.
Shubham, when you've heard about different strategies from this panel, but what are some other strategies or anything you want to add on to what these folks have shared around encouraging tech adoptions, particularly on 360 from all corners of the organization, but especially all the folks who are distributed on the front line?
No, great question again, and I can't agree more with Kristen and Don on this. We have, because of these things, we have for the lack of a better word, philosophy of 10, 20, 70, right? Whenever you have a digital change, technology is only going to solve 10% of the issue. Data is going to solve 20% of the issue. People and process are going to solve 70% of this. So the amount of effort in actually getting value, you need to have 70% of your focus on people and process, even when the core is the technology. And that's where two things we have seen, at client implementations, where things which have been very successful have been, how do you engage representation of the front line early on, right? We are taking your requirements into this rather than building something in the ivory tower or somewhere and then bring, okay, you have this, you go run with it. So that is first part. Second part is, as you get to the MVP level or 80% of the solution, you do want to test that in the field with them and then get their feedback to further iterate upon it. So those two, in our experiences, have significantly improved the adoption than we have seen in the past. So those are the ones that we see clients do that, and those are the ones that we advocate ourselves to do that.
August, how have you thought about using any of these strategies or others at Xcel?
Yeah, I mean, you all mentioned kind of the points I was going to touch on, but I can't stress enough how helpful it was to take my directs, my 4 program managers out who oversee the 5 Midwestern states that I cover, and take them out and let's field verify what the satellite was seeing. Sometimes it was right and it was great and they were impressed by it, and sometimes it was wrong. And having them be able to give feedback and beat up on it a little bit, empower them that they have control over this and they can steer this thing in the direction they want it to go. AIDASH, I mean, you can attest, we spent a lot of time walking around Minnesota and Wisconsin looking at lines, especially when it was cold outside. So that's helped quite a bit. And they know that as the model improves, I don't know if we're on iteration 3 or 4 at this point, but that they were a part of that and they're buying, and they're 15, 20. I got one guy who's got 47 years of experience, that experience is incorporated in the model that's specific to Xcel Energy.
Let me double click on that. It's a really interesting point because you're talking about validating in the field when you're deep into the journey, and then you're going to encounter some moments of, that's not as expected, right? But then you've all talked about how maybe at the beginning of the journey you said, hey, look, I've said this is not going to be perfect. We're going to kind of continue to work through this. We're just going to be 80%. We're not going to make perfect the enemy of the good. How do you navigate that at that stage and get people to kind of keep reminding them of why you're doing this, even when they face those bumps in the road? How did you handle that in the field? I'd like to give some other perspectives as well. I'll start with you, August.
I might have to think about that for a second. I'll pass. Kristen.
Yeah. So I think that we continue to try to remember sort of that we're better than we were yesterday. And then just work through with a partnership of when we see discrepancies like that, trying to understand, okay, what's driving that? Where is it coming from? And really having the communication loop open so we can give that feedback. That feedback can be incorporated and then come back to us in product versions in the future. So high expectations around, we don't just sit there and complain that something's not right. Like, let's go tell somebody, why are we seeing this? What does this mean? What's driving it?
Don, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same viewpoints, but as you face that, for one thing, it helps reinforce the need for the people, because they're in the back of their mind thinking, you're just trying to take my job and make it automated, right? But then for them to know they're the necessary part to overcome that hurdle and to correct it and find what is going to make it right. And then just understanding that it's a tool, it's not a magic bullet, it's not going to fix everything, it's not going to make you spend $0, on vegetation management, but it's just another tool in the toolbox to put more information at their fingertips in the field to make the decisions they have to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes when we talk about all these, like AI and all these other massive tech changes, people are expecting, cars to start flying. No, this is an improvement. This is not, a night and day shift, right? Which is good for them. But you kind of have to take them on the journey. Anything you want to add at this point, August?
No, I thank you, Kristen, for swooping in and saving me there. But no, I agree. I mean, just recognizing your wins and recognizing the progress that you've made. We've, like I said, we're 3 years into this thing. It's easy when you're moving incrementally to not realize the change that's happening, but to look back and say, okay, these areas, I think we've got these dialed in. I think the model sees it the way we want it to. There's still some other ones we need to work on, but knowing that 3 years ago we weren't anywhere near that. So it's, we're finally starting to see things that we can trust, and the guys are buying into it. That's good.
So we've got some really experienced, storied folks up here. We've got someone who's kind of seen different industries from management consulting. I want to take the opportunity, I have more questions, but I want to take the opportunity to share their brainpower with all of you. So I'd like to open it up to some questions from the audience. See if we have any questions for folks who have experience across 15 states and many decades of experience with VM. See a person over here.
Thanks. Just putting you on the spot, but...
And actually, before you begin, when we have questions, can you please introduce yourself and what organization you're from and what state you're from?
Stuart Fleming from Maxar Technologies.
Thank you.
The question I have is, are you able to quantify the improvement in your operations that these technologies have had? Like percent-wise?
Was the question, can you quantify the improvements to your operations?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what metric do you start with? You're looking at CD numbers, you're looking at cost reduction, or you're looking at SCI. I'll go back to, I think we just don't have enough time worth of data to look at it at a scale that I can confidently say, yeah, we are moving the needle. Because, weather in a single year can make you look great and make you look terrible, and you didn't change anything depending on what you're doing in the operation. I believe in the technology. I think that, sometimes for example, we'll get a customer or a tap or something, we're getting multiple requests for tree work on it. And I can look at our schedule and say, well, actually, this is on the schedule this year. We already identified we're going to work this one. Maybe we haven't got to it yet. But, this area needs a lot of attention, and we've already recognized that and had it in our plan without, needing them to bring it to us first. So seeing that has been empowering.
So absence of surprise, good point. And just to maybe double click on the question as well, we talked about goal setting, we talked about KPIs, right? So when we implement technology and tools but don't actually have goals against them, it's actually hard to tell the story about it, right? So where have you not had success in telling the story around tech, improvement? Where have you had success as empowerment goals? Anything you all want to add?
Well, I was just going to say, we're pretty early. We're in like year 2. And so we anticipate being able to look at sort of efficiency around our spend and how we allocated our resources compared to what we traditionally would have done. That's going to be an easy picture to paint. The reliability piece is always a little bit nebulous to me because you're trying to guess what would have happened. How do you quantify what didn't happen? But we have a lot of historical data that we can rely on for that. As far as KPIs go, I think we're looking at what are we not spending time on? Don mentioned this earlier. What are we not spending time on because we've been able to say we don't need to spend time there? How much of that is going on? And then how are we increasing how much of our system we're actually being able to address year over year?
Anything you want to add to the question here? We can also, if anybody else has questions, please raise your hand and Henry will come around with the mic. Don or Shubham, anything to add to that?
No, I think it was pretty good. I think nowadays, in more and more, I'm seeing even in utilities, you always start a project with a clear business case. Particularly as a consultant, I always need to show what is the value that a project needs to bring to the table. But at times in actually comparing that to what happens on the ground, it does take a little bit of time because you have ramp up in terms of getting everyone on the line, getting the tool adopted, ensuring that you're covering the whole territory. For example, in vegetation, you have 5-year cycles, 6-year cycles. So to see massive improvements, it does take time for you to cover more and more territory. But there is a very clear directional focus on value that I see nowadays.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the audience?
I'll say one other thing is part of the education is kind of hidden up front. You don't think about it, but convincing the linemen that are responding to outages that accurate data is very necessary for these tools to work properly. because they still, a lot of them are in the mindset, I'm gonna get you some more money. I'm putting tree for everything, you know, and you gotta have accurate data to directly apply the dollars where they need to be, whether it be grow in or fall in or what have you. You know, those are all different funding streams and they don't fully understand that sometimes. So getting out and communicating with the line departments is crucial as well, or in our experience it has been.
Yeah, the more you talk, the less you work, right? So, yeah. Any other questions from the audience? So I've got one more in that case. So with uncertainty ahead around some of the trends we've been discussing, you know, we heard, you know, the governor talk about kind of all the other climate things that have been happening, you know, in Louisiana. We've kind of heard, you know, some of our technology partners talk about all of the rapid acceleration of tech and the opportunities and the risks of that tech. How do you keep your teams flexible and ready for the next challenge? You've already had to go through change. What's the next change, and how are you keeping your teams ready for that? I'll start with you, Don.
I think just open communication about the expectancy to adjust to, you know, funding changes, weather changes, you know, available technology and how to apply it. And a lot of the technology is developed in response to people in the field saying, hey man, wouldn't it be cool if we had this? And then you work with your partners to see if that's possible. And things you didn't think were possible a few years ago are now commonplace. And so you gain that, I guess, ability for people to really stretch and say, what can we do? What can we use it for? What's out there that we're not taking advantage of?
Kristen, anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, we kind of talk about being agile as a business and being able to respond, because you're right, we don't know what the next thing's gonna be. I think a key for us is to really position our folks who are doing the work, challenging them to be thinking about these things. And then when they find something that maybe they're excited about or they think is going to be helpful, finding ways to support that and let us explore that, even if it doesn't work out in the long term, so that they it builds this culture that I can be innovative and it doesn't have to be perfect and I'm going to get support. And so people start to feel comfortable thinking outside of the box and contributing in that way. But it takes some time for people to start to feel confident about that.
Shubham, how have you seen other companies build a culture that welcomes change and innovation instead of resisting it? And you heard kind of Kristen talk about being agile, right? And more importantly, like what leadership qualities are required to drive that?
Great question, because in this day and age, I think that is one key skill that I see leaders should have and the people should have, because the world is becoming a lot more dynamic. You didn't know what you could do with ChatGPT, you know, a year back. And now everyone is using that, from, you know, elementary school kids to the CEOs for various things. So I think being open as a leader, being open, focusing on the benefit that a technology can drive versus how disruptive it's going to be and how difficult a change is going to be becomes important. And a couple of ways to institutionalize that in a couple of organizations is when you give a free space for experimentation. And I'll give you a specific example for BCG internally, right? Because we advocate for change. We need to embrace change ourselves, right? You know, so we work a lot in slides, right? Or everyone, we work a lot in slides. When GenAI came, for our frontline, you know, associates and consultants, we actually invested a lot of money to be able to create some tools using LLMs. How can you write slides faster? You know, you don't have to worry about formatting and other things. And we launched that across the, you know, 6,000, 7,000 associates that we have. And we saw immediate uptick in people using that. And that opened their mind about how your day-to-day could change using something. And that is philosophy we are seeing nowadays across different companies which want to go in that direction. How can you give them a free space rather than a very framed initiative that would lead to some capacity improvement that they'll track? So experimentation is very important at the start. Then once they have gotten to the mindset of, yes, this is going to make my life better, then formalize that in form of an initiative. So that is something that I've seen work a lot. Encouraging more lunch and learn sessions where people could go and self-explore versus top-down, immediate actions to improve productivity. Those will come. Those will eventually come, but you need to get their head on the right goals first.
August, I want to give you the kind of final word on this. When you think about keeping your teams flexible, building a team as a leader at Xcel that's welcoming change and innovation, how are you going to build that culture?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of the running joke now is that every year it's a different job at Xcel, which we say keeps you sharp, and it really is. But last year we went through tremendous change, and it was one of those things where every 2 weeks or every month there was some new change coming down the pipe, and you just had to buckle up and figure it out. And one thing I realized is that you always look for the why, because everybody wants to know, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And a lot of times, if you're too stuck in your own little circle, you don't see it. So then you zoom out a level. Okay, well, is the why here? Are we serving some purpose that benefits this group in a larger way? You don't find it there, and you just keep zooming out. And 99% of the time, you can find the why. And if you can find the why, you can explain that, and they'll probably understand it. But until you realize that the why might be, 3 layers up, and that the company as a whole needs this to happen and to benefit, have a net benefit. If you can't find that, I think you're going to struggle to manage some of the change that gets handed to you that might not necessarily make your day any easier.
Super. I've learned quite a bit from this group, starting with kind of what you termed as, avoiding a slow death of just constant, cuts in budget and demand increase, and really just waking up and saying, we're going to counter this, embracing change by kind of convincing your front line that this is not going to be perfect, but we're going to make a lot of steps. We're going to get better than we were yesterday, as you said, Kristen. To your framework, Shubham, of 10, 20, 70, like, yes, we've got the tech, we've got the data, but it's really about how you all are going to change the way what you do day to day. And so my hope is that we can all, on our theme of securing tomorrow, and to the discussion that we had on measuring that, like, security is kind of hard to measure. You just know that you need to be doing the right things to maintain security for your operations. And so really glad to see that you all are leading the way with that. And so thank you so much. Looking forward to some continued learning here. Thank you.